Today, erectile dysfunction and female sexual dysfunction, FSD, ED. Okay, both of them are very intense and very difficult topics to talk about because it's such a vast uh, topic and you just can't get enough of it, right? You can't cover it, it's just a lot. So, we're going to try and go step by step and see whether we can sort of do it together, but sort of apart. But I like to talk about both because you guys need to know both perspectives. Men need to know about women FSD, and women need to know about men's ED. Meaning, you're supposed to know your partner's issues and help them, right? Especially if you want to improve and save the relationship. A lot of us don't even know what it is, right? What is ED? What is erectile dysfunction? What is female sexual dysfunction? Okay. Now, I'm going to give you my own definition, and it's sort of a mixture of all of them, right? All the definitions out there. So, you know the cycle, right? For having an orgasm, right? The male and the female. You go into that arousal phase, stage one, and then you have that orgasm, you come down, right? Any part of that phase that you're having a problem is really a dysfunction. That's a simple way of putting it. If it's at the onset, the desire, right? The arousal, you're not getting, turned on. You look at people and say, yeah, whatever, not interested. There might be an arousal issue, desire issue, right? So that can be a dysfunction in men and women. Then when you talk about getting aroused and not having that response that you really want, right? You're not really physiologically feeling turned on, right? If you don't feel it, men and women, that's a dysfunction, okay? Men have to get that erection. We women have to get that clitoral erection too, right? That lubrication. If you don't get that, there's something going on in terms of a problem being along that cycle, along that phase of having sex. Could be psychological, could be physical, could be environmental, could be so many reasons. But you have to, first of all, identify that there is an issue, right? That you're having a problem. But if you don't identify it and you ignore it, you can't address it. And that is very important. A lot of women don't talk about it. A lot of men don't talk about it. Do you know that 52% of men have ED? 52% of men have erectile dysfunction in their lifetime. They're going to have some sort of it, right? 40% is like above, 40, 70, age 40 to 70. And even at 20 years and above, 18% can have ED, erectile dysfunction. 18%. I treat men as young as 18. These things happen for many different reasons. But first of all, identify it and get help. For women, 40% of women have FSD, about, again, depending on which article you're quoting. But I'm sure it's higher than that because we're not honest, right? We don't tell the truth. But I do want you to, first of all, identify, do you have FSD or ED? Now, how do you identify that? Questionnaire, all right? I have a questionnaire. Now, again, there are questionnaires out there, but my two favorite are the Female Sexual Function Index questionnaire, which is called FSFI, and the men have an IIEF, which is the International Index of Erectile Function, all right? So the Female Sexual Function Index and the International Index for Erectile Function, okay? Now, I'm going to go into both of them with the questionnaires, right, with the questions, and it can be intensive, but I think it's important. If we don't go into them, we're not going to really identify or actually realize that we might be having an issue. But if you don't have an issue, you're good. You don't have to listen to this, right? But remember, this could be a friend, this could be a parent, this could be a brother, this could be a sister, this could be a mother, a father. Yeah, I know that, right? But not that you have to be involved in that, but it depends again on your situation, right? So as a mother myself, I know that it is very difficult to talk to children regarding sexual issues. But I know parents that send their children to me for sexual dysfunction and sexual issues, both men and women. The youngest female that I treated was 16 years old. So parents have an important role to play in identifying it, but they themselves need to be a role model and own up and identify their sexual issues. Because remember, if you're not able to function sexually, men and women, you are going to be very, very unhappy, especially if your partner wants to function sexually, right? And you can't match your partner. It's going to happen to everybody eventually. I remember I was at a conference or at a talk show, a radio talk show, and one of the, ladies there said, Dr. Kathy, is it going to happen to me? I said, yes, boo, it's going to happen to you too. Okay, it's going to happen to all of us, but we can prevent it. We can improve it. We can stave it away, right? Make sure it doesn't come full speed into our lives. But we've got to know how to do it. But right now we're talking about identifying it, right? I've talked about how to improve sexual function several different ways through my other videos, but I'll address it again in the future too. But the most important thing, first of all, is to identify, do you have ED or do you have FSD? If you don't know, there are questionnaires that will help you answer it. So the first question I'm going to ask is for the men, and it asks, how do you rate your confidence that you could get and keep an erection? Very low would be 1, low would be 2, moderate would be 3, 4 would be high, 5 would be very high. So how do you rate your confidence that you could get and keep an erection? So it's not just getting the erection, it's keeping it. Okay, that's question number 1. All right, go ahead and answer that question, guys. Number 2, when you had an erection with sexual stimulation, how often were your erections hard enough for penetration? 1, almost never. 2, a few times, much less than half the time. Moderate, 3, sometimes, about half the time. Most of the time, much more than half the time, and almost always would be number 5, all the time. Or almost always will be the highest 5. Number 3 question. I'm giving you a modified, abbreviated form of the male ED questionnaire. Okay. During sexual intercourse, how often were you able to maintain your erection after you had entered your partner? Number 1, almost never. Again, that's the number you're going to give yourself. Number 2, a few times, much less than half the time. You'll give yourself number 2. Number 3, sometimes about half the time. Number 4, most of the times, much more than half the time. And number 5, almost always. Again, the same principle. The higher the number, the better the results you're getting from your sexual intercourse. Number 4, during sexual intercourse, how difficult was it to maintain your erection to completion of intercourse, right? How hard was it to stay hard during that whole process of the sexual act? Extremely difficult would be number 1, very difficult number 2, difficult number 3, slightly difficult number 4, and not difficult number 5. Okay, so you can guess the higher the number, the better you're doing, right? Number 5, when you attempted sexual intercourse, how often was it satisfactory for you? Number 1, almost never. Number 2, a few times, much less than half. Number 3, sometimes about half. Number 4, most of the time, a little bit more than half. And number 5, always, or most of the time, almost always, okay? So that's an abbreviated form. There are about 15 questions for the guys in the full format. I wanted to abbreviate it just to give you an idea how in depth they go into questioning whether you're actually having these issues, even, again, a little bit more, or less, or almost nothing at all, right? So you want to sort of grade it, and then you're going to add up the scores, and then the scores will give you an idea of where you lie, guys, okay? So a score of 5 to 7 would be severe erectile dysfunction, those lower numbers, right? They're going to give you an idea that, oh my gosh, I need to get help right now, okay? If you get 9 to 11, moderate erectile dysfunction, 12 to 16, mild moderate mild to moderate erectile dysfunction, 17 to 21, mild erectile dysfunction, 22 to 25, no erectile dysfunction, right? So you get to 22 to 25, basically you're fine, right? So, because you have 5, 10, 15, 20, 25. That's the maximum you can get. And again, this is the abbreviated form. And if you have between 22 and 25, you have no problems that we would address. And remember, if you're not thinking you're having a problem and you're okay, it's really not classified as an erectile dysfunction because it's got to be more of you're not getting your satisfaction, right? You're dissatisfied, you're unhappy, right? If you're happy and then with what you're doing, then I wouldn't call it a dysfunction. That's the definition, right? Now, I would say something's going on, but if it doesn't bother you, it's not going to bother me. You don't need to seek out help. It's only if it bothers you that I'm going to encourage you to seek out help. And remember, there might be a reason why it doesn't bother you. So look into that too. So that is an idea of a start, just a peek into whether you're having an issue. And again, we can help you. Okay, so we can talk about that some other time. Now, for the women have what we call the Female Sexual Function Index, and there are 19 questions, very in depth. I'm just going to go over the first 2, and it says, over the past 4 weeks, how often did you feel sexual desire or interest? Right? Almost always, same thing, most of the time, sometimes a few times, almost never or never. So that same thing you're going to do with the guys, we do with the women. But the questions are a little bit different, right? Because we have a little bit more of unique things that happen to us that don't happen to guys. Number 2, over the past 4 weeks, how would you rate your level, degree of sexual desire or your sexual interest? Very high, moderate, low, very low, or none at all. Okay, so again, depending on what you mark, you're going to get a score. And at the end of the 19 questions, we'll be able to see whether you are having a problem sexually. And you will know because, again, you're not having an overall satisfaction after sex. So when you have that desire issue, or you have that arousal issue, or you have that erection issue, or you have the penetration issue, right? The question is at the end, how satisfied were you sexually? And are you pretending, which I don't want you to do, but are you so, or are you, it was great. Remember, reaching that orgasm doesn't have to be every single time, but when you do, you want it to be as many times as you can, and your partner will get to know you better, and the chances of it happening will be more, right? So, you have sex on the first date, it might not happen. It might take a few weeks for some people, a few months for some people, a year for some people, because they don't trust, or they're uncomfortable, or they're not sure how to reach that orgasm, right? And that's for women, guys. That's for women. For the men, it's different. Most of it is happening as you age or what you're eating, okay? So I'm going to talk about that at one of my talks. But the most important thing is to identify whether you, first of all, have an issue. Now, with the scores for women, you were looking at desire, arousal, lubrication, orgasm, satisfaction, and pain. Pain can be something that women have discomfort because they're dry or because they have something called vaginismus. So these are the things that can actually interfere with your having satisfactory sexual intercourse, okay? I wanted to bring out those questions. I probably will go into them in more details when you come into the office or when you have a visit, depending on what we find. But, I have a whole protocol that will evaluate you in terms of what could be the issue. And I try to make it very simple. These questions are interesting because sometimes when you don't get answers by doing the basics, we can ask these questions and then we can find out whether we're on the right track or not, okay? So remember, ED is going to happen. There are things you can do to prevent it from happening. If it's happening already, those questions I just brought up are an indicator that you got to do something ASAP to stop it progressing, okay? Women, you have to know the truth. You've got to be honest to yourself. We are brought up not to ask to be sexually satisfied. I want to reverse that. I want to make sure that you have the greatest orgasm of your life, because this is the only chance you have. This is the only life you have. So I want to make sure that you are aware, get those hormones checked, right? You have to have the partner, right? You've got to have a partner that loves you, right? You want to be in love. You want to be in a great relationship with your partner to be satisfied. and vice versa, guys too. So if you're not in a great relationship, you got to do something about it. Make it better or move out, right? But if you're married, that's another thing. Get counseling and seek help, to make sure that you've done everything you can to save the marriage. And I tell my patients that want to get divorced, before you divorce, can you come get your hormones checked, please? Because when you get your hormones checked, I can actually see the difference and the discrepancy, and that might be the reason why you guys are not getting along, because you don't know each other. And of course, I have some other questionnaires that talks about personality type and talks about temperament type, because it really helps to know each other. Say, oh my gosh, I didn't know you were like that. I didn't know you were like that, right? I didn't know he was like that. Didn't know she was like that. And you get to know each other and love each other, but you also get an idea of how to be friends and how to realize it's really not about who's right or wrong. It's about, can the two of you make it? Okay? All right. So that was the talk for today. I will talk to you tomorrow, today, all right? Or later on tonight, or tomorrow night. But have a great day, all right? Take care. Bye.